Right. So we are live on YouTube. Natalie, do you want to do the intro or do you want me to?
You could do it.
Oh, I can do it. It seems
I always do it, so you could do it today.
I know. I can do something. Men can do anything women can do for 15% more pay.
Ooh. Ouch. I know.
It's not a slam. It's just a fact.
Yeah. Do a thing.
I think we're live on Facebook. I don't know. See, the thing about this is I hit the button to go live on Facebook, but like it has like a 5 to 10 second delay. So I never know until it actually like reloads the video and pops up. But I do know that I can't hear myself right now.
There's a notification that we're live on Facebook.
There's no audio. Yeah, and there's no audio coming out of my mic on Facebook. So that's great. It should be working now though.
Okay. Hope it's working.
I don't know. This is good live video. There we go. Yeah, now it's working.
We're
good.
Professionals.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing we have a professional operation here. Yeah, exactly. We've been doing this for a year also, but anyway, we are.
Come on, do it, Broadbent.
Professionalism.
You can do this.
We are live right now on the Science Enthusiast podcast with not one, but two guests. First, we have the most popular and reoccurring guest that we've ever had on the show, our favorite Freedom from Religion Foundation attorney and atheist Captain America, Andrew Seidel.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me on. It's always fun to be on with you guys, especially since we know Ken Ham is watching this right now in his lair, wherever that may be.
He's ready to get the beeps and beeps all set because with a couple of atheists, we're talking on their podcast. So, yeah.
And I'm still angry that he flip-flopped and can't make a commitment. Is it beep or bleep? Like, make a decision. Make a commitment to one and stick with it. Quit flip-flopping.
He'll tell us next time.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And also, we are joined by Jim Helton of the Tri-State Freethinkers. We'll say there's a lot of tri-states. We'll say that's the Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana. And we actually met. We're on here today to talk about the Ark Encounter and the protests that you organized last year and organizing again this year. We actually met at that, and I was blown away by just how cool it was and all the cool people that were there. So Jim, thank you so much for taking some time out of your afternoon to join us.
Oh, my pleasure. Excited to be on.
So the Ark Encounter is turning one.
Yay! Happy birthday!
In about a couple of weeks. Happy something.
Happy something.
So why don't you, Jim? Why don't you just start off by just telling us a little bit about like what you did last year and what you're doing again this year to celebrate.
Sure. I actually live.
Whatever.
Yeah, celebrate's not a good word, but I actually live in between the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter. So just to put things in perspective, we put a protest that got international attention. We had 6 documentary film crews, including the Bill Nye film and We Believe in Dinosaurs. So I'm excited about that we'll actually be in the Bill Nye film. We had Dan Barker from the Freedom from Religion there, David Silverman, President of American Atheist, Aaron Ra. We had also Larry Decker from the Secular Coalition for America, and we had a huge turnout. It was just an amazing event, all the attention. I think the one thing we accomplished, which was our goal, was to change the story. If you looked at a lot of the pieces around the Ark, a lot of them were fluff pieces and nice things. In the general media, I mean, obviously atheist blogs were picking it apart, but the general media was fairly kind to the Ark. Around that time, the majority of all the articles written after that protest or during were negative towards the Ark and talk about how they discriminate and it was anti-science and all of our talking points. So we were very happy about that. But as times passed, we've seen some of that go away. So we want to make sure people are aware of all the negative things on the Ark. So we decided to do it again.
That's awesome. Absolutely. Just like, because it hasn't gone away in a year and Ken Ham likes to talk about it and how great it's doing. And Yeah,
well, and that's something we haven't. They haven't published the numbers, the attendance numbers for it yet. So we're kind of in the state of guessing. What it's going to be. We know it's not going to be what they predicted and what they forecasted, but I believe we're going to find out in a couple of weeks, because they actually have to start paying out the rebate that's from the state for the taxes. Is that right?
It's not going to be anywhere near the numbers Ken Ham predicted of the 2.5 to 3 million, but it's going to be closer to 1 million people, which is still a lot that are coming to see it.
Yeah, I think
especially considering how it's in the middle of nowhere.
But the point is, right? He knows these numbers right now. He gets daily reports, I'm sure. If not, he certainly gets weekly reports. He knows the numbers, and instead of ever releasing them and just saying this is the visitation, he always kind of does these hazy, these foggy, oh, we're getting lots and lots of people, just look at the video, and all you have to do, Ken, is just give us facts, man, give us evidence, give us data. That's what we want to see. But yeah, I agree with Jim. I think probably it'll be a little over 1 million that we see, which is not what they were estimating. They said 2 million at first, then they revised that down to 1.4. So it's still half what they initially expected. So there is some silver lining in there that it's not doing as well as they hoped.
And in the meantime, the city's going bankrupt. It's not doing any. They gave away so much to get it. The city and county are in major financial trouble.
Yeah, it's been a huge hit. That's one of the things that has been nice in the news. We've been seeing a lot of these news stories mentioning that there is not the revival that everybody was hoping to see from the Ark, and that's because the Ark provides everything it needs. There's no reason for people to go to the city.
Well, it's so far away from the city too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if this area was looking for some kind of economic boom because of this ridiculous theme park, it really sucks for that area that it's not, they're not even seeing any benefit like that. That's a problem.
And that's one of the things that a lot of the secular organizations, including FFRF and AU, we were all pointing this out at the beginning, that the math here doesn't work. Not only are the estimates wrong, but this is a bad deal for all the governments involved. And I think they ignored that because of the religious aspect of the park. I think there's this assumption that no, it's religious, it's Christian, these are Christian people, they would not mislead us in any way, shape, or form. We're gonna be okay out of this. And I mean, religion is nothing if not misleading.
The good Christian values, maybe, that, in quotes, the thing that they probably could sell with that to that population, right? A little bit more easily than to maybe some other places.
But common sense would tell you, when we drove there, you could put Disneyland where the Ark wasn't. It wouldn't help the town out. You go to the right, the Ark's right there. You're not going to go to the mile to the town where there's virtually nothing. Just the pure location of it is not going to benefit the town. I noticed that the day we drove up, that this was going to be an issue. This should have been common sense.
I agree completely. And when we were there filming the commercial, the FFRF commercial inside the park that Ken Ham hated so very, very much, we did stop and go to the town, and we got a cup of coffee at this really great coffee shop with a tattoo parlor in back, and there was an art gallery as well. It was really a nice little gem in the town, but it was kind of it. Everything else was sort of tumbleweeds going through. So it really wasn't seeing any of the impact that I think they were expecting. Though if anybody does go, I highly recommend that coffee shop / tattoo parlor / art gallery.
See, we can plug that. That's what people should go for. Then we just really spread the word about this. But
they've had businesses. They're even the Mayor store that has been open in the family for years is closing down. Restaurants are closing down. They're starting to close down this year. They've had a number of closures just from it not helping.
So it's just, the Ark will just exist in a ghost town.
Basically.
Pretty much. It's just
and meanwhile they're talking about but meanwhile they're talking about expanding. They're gonna build a big amphitheater out there, and they're I think they're building another restaurant maybe.
Tower of Babel.
Yeah, the Tower of Babel, yeah.
And the Seven Plagues ride. I can't make this up.
Oh my God. Wait, that's real?
It's a real thing. Yeah,
oh
I think the Tower of Babel is phase 2. The Seven Plagues ride, I think, is phase 3, if I'm not mistaken.
That's next level bullshit crazy. Wow.
I don't understand how you make that into a ride.
Well, they got that new diorama of gladiators fighting giants and dinosaurs, and everybody sent this to me or commented when we posted it saying that's funny, but you know, they thought it was a spoof, that we made it up. Nobody believed they really put that in there. They thought we were doing that, and I'm like, no, like I had a link to Ken Ham's blog to show they were proud of this. Like this wasn't us making fun of them. They did it themselves.
The thing, they are a parody, they are like the Onion of amusement parks. Like it shouldn't be real. It doesn't seem real, but it is. And I mean, still over 1 million people have decided it was worth a trip.
Yeah. The one thing that I think is interesting about the visitation, and Jim, and I mean, maybe you can speak to this too, is I don't think there's a reason to go back. I guess maybe if they're expanding it and are building these rides, but right now it is just, I mean, it's basically just dioramas and plaques that you read. Like, there's no reason to visit this like you would with Disney World every single year, or with Disney World where you can only get, you know, a little part of one of the parks done in a day. So I think those numbers are going to continue to go down as has been predicted. But I don't know, Jim, what do you think about it?
It's a lot of empty space. And now I toured it right when it opened, and I actually had the pleasure of going through it with Bill Nye. Like, they didn't have handles on, that, you know, there were signs missing. It clearly wasn't finished. Like, it clearly wasn't finished, but they had a deadline to that. My favorite part of the whole thing with touring with Bill Nye is we set up to have pictures with kids, you know, for selfies because it was their birthday and they had to do a protest on their birthday. Was that Bill Nye looked at me at the end of it and said, I'm surprised they let you in. You know, security came up to me as soon as I walked in the door and followed me around. I had a personal escort the entire time I was there. That was nice.
Very nice.
That's so nice.
What do they think you're going to do?
I walked in right to where they were. Security went up to me and said, "Hi, Jim, how you doing?" And then they brought me over. They introduced me. They actually were at our protest. So the Ark had about several employees and volunteers at our protest, about a half dozen of them the entire time. So they were actually pretty nice. They gave us a tour and we talked, and I got to watch Aaron Ra and them debate. Because normally when you're there, you have to be fairly quiet about the exhibits, you know, or they'll kick you out. Well, Aaron Ra and this gentleman were just going at it full voice and drawing their own crowd, debating each exhibit, where Aaron was doing it from a scientific point of view and ripping them apart. And I was going at it from a morality point of view of, this is horrible. This is a story about genocide and incest. And you built a park around it for children. Like, am I the only one that thinks this is
something wrong? Something wrong.
Yeah. You know, hence our billboard, which started this whole thing, you know.
Now, Jim,
the billboard, for anyone who doesn't know, what was the billboard?
So we proposed a billboard that said Genocide and Incest Park. And it got international attention. We had a billboard company willing to put it up. Once it got so much media exposure, they didn't put it up. So we had a mobile billboard company do it, and then he got feared for his life, so he wouldn't do it. We even slapped censored stickers over everything. So you couldn't read anything. It was like 6 censored stickers. That's all it was in a boat. We even slapped censored stickers over the giraffes' heads. No animals, no nothing. Not one company in the US would put it up, even censored. And we even went to Australia, where Ken Ham's from, to see if they would put it up, and they wouldn't. So American Atheist printed it out for us. We had a 15-foot banner we put on the opening day there. It was like Genocide and Incest Park. We had signs that were like, this exit when you got off the exit. It was it was amazing. But in the amount of press, I cannot stress that enough. Like, the protest started from 10 to 2. At 8:30, they had me mic'd up. I was doing nonstop interviews till 12:30, where I asked to take a little lunch break, and then continued that till 3:30. Like, I didn't see the press. The New York Times, Miami Herald, Washington Post. I was doing Fox and Friends Live. We were shooting stuff from the UK, France, Germany. It went everywhere. And when I told the stories of, like, they made you sign a vow of chastity saying you couldn't have sex, the reporter in England laughed and told me I was the funniest interview she did, but could I stick to the facts? And I was talking about these things, and she cut the interview, fact checked me, and called me back, apologizing and screaming like, I can't believe all this crap's true. Like, she just did not believe me when I was going through the laundry list of what the Ark was doing.
Well, and this is the crazy thing about it, because everything about it is unbelievable. Like, what you're talking about, from the discrimination, the chastity vows, the statement of faith, down to fitting that many animals on a boat, dealing with the fluids and the the amount of water that it would take to rain that much, 10 Atlantic Oceans by my back of the napkin calculations. Everything about it is unbelievable. And yet they spent millions and millions of dollars building something that is just thoroughly unbelievable. It's amazing.
And did you notice the wives' names?
Yes, they invented wives' names. Yeah.
Do you know how they got those? So speaking of Disneyland, we were going through there and we asked one of their scholars, like, hey, these wives have names. Do you know something we don't? Like, is there a discovery that we don't know about?
Well, Jim, we should tell people, for people who don't know, the wives on board are not named. Like many of the women in the Bible, they don't have names. Samson's mom doesn't have a name. Jephthah's daughter, who he kills because God tells him to, doesn't have a name, and including the wives on board. But at the Ark Park, they do have names. So
one of them is named after a Disney character, Ariel. And we asked how they came up with this, and they said, "Oh, one of the daughters of the employees likes Ariel," and we took a vote. So they did a popular vote, is how they came up with the names for the Ark Encounter wives.
That's the way they did it in the Bible days too.
Yeah.
They just they voted on like the names of people.
Yeah, it makes absolutely sense as the official story. So I don't see why not. I don't see the problem with it.
Yeah.
But I guess when everything's unbelievable, it seems like somewhere it has to be like that we're just bullshitting people and like making up stories, but it's all true how unbelievable it seems.
Yes.
Like,
and we're laughing about this, but if you ever go through it, and Andrew, you could probably speak to this too, like the families and children that go through it believe it. Like when I came walking out there, families were approaching me. They're like, how was it? Is it exciting? And I'm like, that's not the word I would use. Like,
it's something. It was interesting.
Yeah. They were thrilled.
Not yet finished.
They truly buy it. And they tell their kids, when I went through the Creation Museum, Ark Encounter, I mean, people, they're like, you're going to burn in hell if you don't believe this. Like, they were very adamant about it. It was scary.
Well, and that's one of that. It was, to me, far and away the saddest aspect of my visit to the park was seeing these children there and knowing that they're basically just being indoctrinated and told to shut your brain off. All those curious questions that you have coming up, like, well, how would they feed this man? All that stuff. Just don't ask questions, because the park does not answer any of these questions. It purports to, so that's what it's trying to do, but it ends up raising far more than it asks. So to me, that was it was the saddest part of the visit. But it is also, this is why I get up in the morning and come to the Freedom from Religion Foundation and fight these fights and write to every school district in a 5-state radius and explain to them that if you take your kids on a field trip to the Ark, we're going to sue you. That's why I do what I do. So it was sad, but it's also it's motivating in a way.
That was one of the things that came out of the Ark protest, is the amount of violations we received. Some of them, which were forwarded to FFRF, was Grant County, where it's located out of. We had 14 pages of violations that came out of there. From a couple parents and schools.
And the high school band performing at the opening.
Mm-hmm. They had a pastor of the high school listed on their website. That was his job title, who happens to be one of my in-laws, believe it or not. I didn't realize that, but yeah.
You didn't realize it was your in-laws, or?
It was my wife's mom, stepdad's brother. It was like but there was a connection there. And right before the letter goes out, my wife's like, that's going to be a problem. And I'm like, I'm still sending it. Like, I'm sorry, but they had so many violations that were such egregious. But the good news is, which we didn't publicize too much because they're working with us, is all 14 pages of violations have been removed, and they're doing ongoing training with their staff on the separation church and state. We know because of the staff, though, there's still ongoing violations, but they're now trying to be proactive and working to maintain that, where I think the attitude in the past was kind of, screw you, we don't care.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a good outcome, from all this.
And I think it's important to note that the goal isn't to sue people. The goal is, if anything, to educate, to say, hey, you can't do this because it's not separation of church and state. You're blending the two here, and we can't do that if we're spending public money on this. We can't merge these two things together, and not to sue them, not to tell them what to believe, because you can believe whatever you want. You just don't use public money to do it or to promote it.
Yeah, no, Dan, that's a perfect point, and it's something that's really important that we strive to do here at FFRF. I mean, I write we write 1,000 letters every year and half of those go to school districts. In fact, I was actually just writing a letter before we got on this call about a couple violations, and the attorney for the school district said, "Take me off your mailing list." And I had to point out that it's not a mailing list.
It's not it.
Your school's doing something wrong. If you're off our mailing list, I'm taking you to court, which we don't want to do. I don't want to sue a public school, especially a public school near the Ark that is being, the county's being bankrupt. The schools are taking a hit, right? I don't want to take money out of the public schools, but we are willing to stand up and protect those students' rights of conscience. Yeah. And if we have teachers or staff imposing their religion on other people's children, yeah, you can bet we will be willing to sue over that. But the goal is always to resolve it without that. So it's an important point, Dan.
Yeah. And the hope is obviously that, obviously people are taking their children there and indoctrinating them, which is really sad because it's sort of this monument of like anti-intellectualism and ignorance and all of this, but you cannot bring that into public schools.
Absolutely.
And
I mean, that's the thing. It's so awful about it. It is a lie to children, that they spent millions of dollars just lying to kids.
Yeah.
It's what makes it so awful.
Because it's a curiosity killer, because you're just told to go in there and accept it all at face value. And like, that's the last thing we want to do. Like, those of us who are parents, it's like, we want to instill curiosity and inquisitiveness in children and like raise the next generation of like skeptical free thinkers, like all of that good stuff. And the Ark is kind of the the fact that it exists, there's like something offensive about that it can exist and, do some damage, I think, in the way that we're getting or trying to help children think. And,
absolutely. Yeah. Now, Jim, unfortunately, you and I were talking, and I can't make it to the protest this year. I will 100% be there next year. But I have a very important question for you. Are you actually going to have porta potties this year, or are they going to be taken away from you again?
So that's an issue. We're attempting that again this year. For those that don't know, multiple people companies would not deliver porta potties to us, and we found one that would. But when the driver got near us, said, "Are you protesting the Ark?" and refused delivery. So we could not get a porta potty to our protest. We were just like, wow. So what we did was we found the same company that had porta potties right up the street, which they drove us to, and then we all took pictures with it, with his company logo and us, to let him know, thanks for that. So he didn't want to be branded with us, but it was, we found it dumbfounding. It was just a porta potty.
And then I wrote them a letter explaining that what they were doing violated the Civil Rights Act, because they were basically denying you service because you were non-believers. Yeah,
it was just wow. This year we're taking a little different approach this year. Last year we brought in a lot of national organizations. That was all of our partners were basically national organizations. This year we're bringing on local organizations. So we partnered a lot with the social justice movement, between the United We Stand, who did the Women's March, the March for Science Cincinnati, the LGBT community. So we're rounding up all the local organizations here for this one. Still bringing a few big name speakers. Hemant Mehta, the Friendly Atheist, is going to be speaking. We got Phil Ferguson from the Phil Ferguson Show is going to be there. John Loftus is coming down, and we're still looking to add a few more names to that. The other thing we're excited about is not only we'll have the protest rally all together, it won't be separate this year. We're actually going to march from the protest site to the Ark, because they have sidewalks this year. So we'll actually be able to be right in front of the Ark, and I'm looking forward to marching on the Ark Encounter 2x2.
That's exciting.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's probably the first time that sidewalk's going to get used too.
Yeah. So we adopted the highway in front of the Ark. So we do use it, because we did adopt the highway in front of the Ark and the Creation Museum. So that's always our favorite volunteer activity.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I want to know, from what so it's a year old, just about. What do you think the future of this place is? Because Andrew mentioned though, this I don't think is a repeat trip for tons of people. I'm sure, Dan, do you want to go back? You went once. You want to go back?
I mean, I was, like I said before, I was there opening day. They didn't have the top floor open. A lot of it wasn't done. I drew on the third floor, I think, by one of the videos. They had a display case of an Ark that was covered in dust, and I wrote in the dust, "This is stupid." So I'd like to see if that's still there.
So you have some reasons to go back, but
at the same time, I don't want to drive 3 hours and then pay $10 for parking and then $35 for a ticket and then sit on a shuttle.
Yeah, it's $40 a ticket, $10 to park. It's not a cheap event. I see it as being what the Creation Museum is. You know, when the Creation Museum opened, every year it had double-digit decreases attendance, roughly about 10%. It kept decreasing for 5 years in a row. I see the Ark doing that, but the fact that it's starting at over 1 million people, you know, and they didn't finance it, you know, and they financed a lot of it with other people's money, I think they're going to be fine. Now, the sad thing is the Creation Museum tripled its attendance because of the Ark, because of the 2-for-1. So while that was slowly deteriorating and going away, this Ark gave it a big, big boost to now where they're looking to expand it. Yeah, the 2-for-1 because so close. And Ken Ham put it in Kentucky for a couple reasons. One, 2/3 of the entire U.S. population is within a 1-day drive of Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And Kentucky gave them everything they wanted and then some, you know, where I don't think any other state would have given them what they did with the separation church and state and all the incentives. Yeah. So with
I don't know, Indiana might have. I mean, especially when Pence was in office.
Mike Pence land, yeah.
So there's a couple states out there.
Do you think this is how long will this kind of place last?
Unfortunately, I think a long time.
Do you think a long time?
I think it's going to be there. I think it's going to be there for a while. I mean, I talk to the people. I see the people. They're enthusiastic about it. It's not, you know, if people are predicting it's going to be bankrupt in the next couple of years, I think they're sadly mistaken. As much as I would want to see that, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Well, and I think, Jim, you hit on the reason for that before. It's because they got such a sweet deal from the town, from the county, and from the state on the financing that it puts them in the black almost immediately. That's how nice the deal was.
Yeah, like to break this down, 65 million was junk bonds, okay? That was financed, and the city helped put this on to sell them. Now, when they pay their real estate taxes, 75% of their real estate taxes go to pay back that junk bond. So the county and state are paying back their loan. 2% of the employees' paychecks go back to paying that loan. So they're not even paying their own loans back. They financed this so well. They were given 100 acres for $1. They were given over $100,000 in cash by the county. With all these incentives, you look at this big project, they're not on the hook for $90 million or $100 million. You know, probably at their own money after all the rebates, it's less than $20 million for this huge project. They're operating profitable with only doing a half or a third what Ken Ham predicted. And even the county or city, one of their people came out and said, this is a bad deal. They took it over. They got elected afterwards. They're like, this is a bad deal. They weren't against the Ark. They're like, he did claim, hey, we still like the Ark. It's doing well, but it was a bad deal for the city. They're now realizing that.
And just a couple of refinements for people who don't know, a junk bond is not a guaranteed bond. It means that 62 million in bonds that was issued, that there's no, if it defaults, it's not guaranteed. So it's just the people who bought those bonds are just screwed, basically, is what that means. Like you said, basically free land, free money, $18 million in incentives from the state. So it's a sweet deal, which makes it very difficult to predict that it's going to go under, to sink real quick.
And they get to maintain their discriminatory hiring practices. And this is probably what bothers me the most is the way they set this up between a nonprofit and a for-profit company. The entrance gate is a for-profit company that can receive tax incentives, but the actual boat itself is a nonprofit which can discriminate it. So they're getting the best of both worlds, which is a huge problem.
Well, and we should say too, for people who weren't following this when it happened, the state did yank the funds, the incentives, the $18 million in incentives because of these discriminatory hiring practices. And Ken Ham sued. Now he won that case, and he shouldn't have. And it was being appealed when Bevin got elected and decided not to continue the case and to go ahead and give Ken Ham that $18 million, therefore mooting it. So the case basically died, and I'm convinced Ham would have lost those issues on appeal. There's just no way. And he loves to talk about how he won in court, but really what happened was Bevin won the election.
Bevin replaced the transportation cabinet overnight of the people that were opposing. So he did that overnight quickly. And then Ken Ham's suit was, I'm suing the state of Kentucky because they're discriminating against me, not allowing me to discriminate.
Yes. Yeah. They're discriminating against my religion for not.
You have to be tolerant of his intolerance.
Yes.
It was.
Yeah, pretty much.
And for people who don't know Bevan, I just wrote to him a couple weeks ago because he is now trying to fight crime with prayer walks.
With prayer.
Yes.
In like the bad
thoughts and prayers are
areas
effective.
of Louisville.
Yeah.
And he actually defended that when he got called out on it. He started calling out preachers, not just atheists. He started calling out preachers for this. And we're the year of the Bible, the second year in a row in Kentucky as well.
So
it's an issue.
Real life. All of this,
exhausting.
like, there's so much that shouldn't be happening because, like, separation of church and state.
We invited Planned Parenthood to speak. I don't know if they'll be able to on an official basis or not, but basically on the premise that they're taking away all this money, defunding Planned Parenthood and giving it to this religious organization instead of women's services. And, if you can do these things, there's no reason you should do that. We have one clinic that offers abortions in the entire state of Kentucky. They have shut them all down but one. Yeah. And it's a huge, huge problem.
Well, and that's the thing that is worth discussing and just putting out there is that what does money get spent on? It is a, limited resource. And are we talking about like this weird religious boat, or are we talking about women's health? Like, well, let's weigh those things in some sense and have a
Kentucky,
conversation.
If you look at all the things Kentucky spends money on, like Kentucky spends $17 million on abstinence-only sex education. Mm-hmm. If you look at all these issues, we are funding religious agenda in our government by a lot. And if you look at all the equal rights things we're fighting, whether it would be proper science, women's rights, reproductive, separation, church and state, LGBT, like all these things, the religious right is on the wrong side of all of them. And they're all basically equality issues that we need to stand up for.
Okay, I got to get depressing for 1 second because the religious funding issue is about to get, in my opinion, a lot worse. There's a case that the Supreme Court has right now. They are going to decide it literally any day. My guess is Monday. They'll hand the decision down. It's called Trinity Lutheran v. Comer. And it's basically about whether or not the government can give churches money when they have a program that's sort of open to everybody. So for instance, if the case involves playgrounds, resurfacing playgrounds, and the state refused to give money to the church to resurface their playground because you're a church, you can then take the money that you saved there and use it to proselytize people. And I think this is going to be a bad decision. I think it's going to come down probably 7-2 is my guess, maybe 6-3, but it's going to be bad, and we're going to have a big fight on our hands as a result of it. And I mean, the floodgates, I think, are going to open in terms of cash going to churches, especially under the administration that we currently have. I mean, Mike Pence has done a great job of stacking the cabinet with people like Betsy DeVos and Rick Perry and Scott Pruitt, who are, they are evangelicals who FFRF has tangled with every single one of them in other contexts. Rick Perry wanted to, when his state caught fire, he wanted to pray for rain. He held a huge prayer rally. Scott Pruitt defended the 10 Commandments on the Oklahoma courthouse lawn to the point of total inanity. So this is going to, everybody should watch out for it. You'll hear about it. And, FFRF submitted an amicus brief. We're litigating similar cases in New Jersey. Anyway, it's going to be bad, I think. So hold on to your butts.
Oh,
More thing to worry about.
Andrew.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know.
You have your Jurassic Park poster in the background, so
I do. So it's all fitting. So
hold on.
And then we have the Johnson Amendment coming down the pipeline as well. And I think the thing people aren't talking about when it comes to the Johnson Amendment, it's not that the preachers are speaking out and endorsing politics. They're already doing that, to be honest. They end up becoming super PACs, because all that money is going to funnel to churches, not to super PACs, because it's tax deductible and it can remain hidden. So it turns churches into one big super PAC. And we have no idea where it's coming from. And all that money will funnel just through churches. So the Johnson Amendment scares me even more.
Well, it should. And I mean, I could talk about that for another hour. But FFRF has actually. We should do
a show about Johnson Amendment. I
would highly recommend that. It's not sexy when you talk about it as the Johnson Amendment, but it is. Jim hit the nail on the head. It is an incredibly important issue that people don't know enough about. And what they do know about They tend to think, oh, isn't that like a free speech thing for churches? And it's absolutely not. I will say this: FFRF has sued Donald Trump over his executive order trying to get rid of the Johnson Amendment. We've actually sued the IRS a couple times for not enforcing the Johnson Amendment,
Right.
and to make sure that churches submit Form 990 so that the income to churches and the money coming in and out would be tracked if the Johnson Amendment ever went away. So we are very worried about this, and our organization's kind of on the forefront of fighting against it. Our attorneys last week were on Capitol Hill lobbying about this very issue, explaining to legislators, this is why you can't get rid of the Johnson Amendment, why you have to fight to keep it. And did a lot of education, opened a lot of eyes. It was good stuff.
Yeah, I think maybe that is something for the future to talk about more to our audience, just because it's a big thing.
Right, and it's worrisome. Yeah. And the logic behind it is not easily explained in 30 seconds. And by that time, a lot of people are, moving on to scrolling on to something else. But yeah, I mean, just like you said, you can't track that money. And so you're going to have churches that are basically these super PACs that can pull out ads and endorse whatever. And all of a sudden we have these easily influenceable people, whoever is giving them the most money, that's probably who they're going to side with, that are literally churches controlling how elections go, especially in very religious conservative states like Kentucky and further down south.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah,
it's exhausting. Right. I'm exhausted.
Well, but that's why we have people like you guys who are advocating for all of this and being outspoken about it, which is so important. It is important to have protest at the Ark, to just be like, we still know that you're here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It's bullshit. But I think it's important for and be present, because you know, it's way too optimistic, probably, but walking by and listening to what your speakers are saying, and maybe a little spark. No, that's probably overly some of the people that might the Ark, but to somebody, maybe. But even just the presence alone of being there and advocating for yeah.
And I'll just add on to that from a legal perspective that standing up against these things is actually incredibly important as they happen, and continuing to raise a voice against that. So I really do appreciate what Jim's doing for two reasons that's important. One, the Supreme Court has actually looked at religious monuments on public land and said, well, you know what? Nobody challenged that for 50 years. Nobody made a stink, so they must not think it's religious. This was about the Ten Commandments, which begins, I am the Lord thy God. The Supreme Court basically said, yeah, that's not religious enough. Nobody thinks of it as a religious endorsement, so it can stay on public land, because they thought nobody had protested it, which turned out not to be true with a little bit of research. So it is really important. And I mean, the second thing that I'll say as an attorney who does this for a living, we are far more effective creating the legal changes that we want to see when we have active local people involved in these issues. And Jim has been a fantastic activist I've known you for what now, 6 years doing this, 5 years. So it's done. What, 3 years you've been doing it?
I've only been doing this 4 years total.
Okay, all right. Well, it seems this is how much work you do, Jim. It seems like I've been doing longer than you do. But we need that local activism to support the legal side of things. It doesn't seem like you should, but we are far more effective when we have that.
And I couldn't agree with you more, which will kind of lead me to my next announcements and maybe a future show. I've just taken on a position with American Atheist as their national field organizer. And
congratulations.
Yeah.
And that focus is to do a grassroots movement with local affiliates, with local groups and activists, and kind of doing a model what we've done similar here in Kentucky and Cincinnati, fighting for equal rights to separation church and state. And with that uptick, Andrew, I'm sure you're going to see a lot more violations being reported, because we are definitely going to help them do that. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, congratulations. You're a great choice for that job.
Thank you. We made some soft announcements. I think the big announcement will be at the American Atheist Convention in August. But I'm super excited about it. I think we can have a big impact as a grassroots movement, in this fight of separation church and state.
I agree completely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Well, exciting stuff, like good work being done. And so like, yeah, I'm sure that we will have more conversations in the future about all of these things, because then there's there's always something new.
It never ends.
There's always, it never ends. So it's just like to be continued every time we have these conversations. And like, hey, Ken Ham, if you're watching, you still have a chance to come on the podcast.
Open invitation, Ken. We'll be nice.
Open
we'll be friendly.
invitation.
We won't use any swear words.
No beeps or bleeps for you to like put out there to your ARC, but like we hope that you show this at your staff meeting or fans.
Again.
And then Andrew, I got a year to work on a shield for your bat when you come down, right?
Yes,
So-
yes, indeed.
I'll get to work on that.
Okay, and if we do a Johnson Amendment interview, I will scrap the tie and shirt, and I will wear a Captain America tee instead.
Then we're definitely doing a Johnson
make that
Amendment.
Yeah, we absolutely.
All right.
Has to happen. So, okay, guys, to wrap up, like where can people find you on the internet? Because we know everyone wants to keep track of all of this activism and stuff going on. So, Andrew, where can people find you?
So the Freedom From Religion Foundation is ffrf.org. Please join us. We need all the help you can get. FFRF on all the social media. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook, Andrew L. Seidel. Sadly, there's actually an Andrew Seidel. He's like a 60-year-old guy who teaches at the Dallas Theological Seminary. And I just like came on the scene and just ruined his good name with all my atheism.
That atheist.
I know. So I'm using the L because I kind of feel bad for this guy. So Andrew L. Seidel, if you want to find me on Twitter or Facebook.
And Jim, what about you? Where
You can find me at the Tri-State Freethinkers.com. Soon you'll be able to find me at Atheist.org as soon as the webpage gets opened. I'm on Facebook as Jim G. Helton. I use my middle initial for the same reason, Andrew. The problem is you make sure you get the right one because now there's a number of fake accounts of Jim G. Heltons out there. So I have a fan club. So there's that.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on and talking to us about the ARC's first birthday and all this other stuff that's going on, because it never ends.
Yeah. Well, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you
so much.
Bye, guys.